We're so happy to see so many of you out tonight, a few new faces. We have a real treat tonight. We have Lisa McKinney, who comes to us from Edgewood, which is out Van Zandt County, out East Texas way, so she's come in tonight just for us. She's been doing genealogy research for about 20 years. She has Cherokee Indian, Yankee, and Confederate roots. And she's earned a master's in liberal arts from SMU. She currently does some freelance writing and editing as well as genealogy research for clients. And she won first place writing award from the Dallas Genealogical Society for coming to understand sources. And then she also won a short story award from the Greater Dallas Writers Association. So she really keeps busy with her writing. She's also writing a book, A Boy's Life in Gramercy Park, and is that one finished?
No.
Okay, no, not finished yet. Which sounds very interesting. It's based on genealogical research of an 1867 diary. Maybe we can get her to tell us a little bit about it tonight. She's recently compiled what she's coming to speak to us tonight about, the Fort Worth Real Estate, Ben F. Allen and Sons Business Records, City Property, 1914 to 1916, Volume 1, which just recently won the 2012 TSGS Writing Award for first place in reference works. And that's where I met her. And Suzanne met her because she had the booth right next to the Fort Worth Library. And she very graciously donated a copy of her book to the Fort Worth Library. So you can find it down there if you don't want to pick one up tonight. Lisa still finds time to volunteer with the Van Zandt Genealogical Society, write a blog, and attend seminars and speak to genealogists. And we're really lucky to have her tonight because she just got back from the New England Regional Genealogical Conference in Manchester, New Hampshire. And the topics that she spoke on were reading the genealogy in quilts, samplers, and other textiles. And she is assigned to do 3 legacy quick guides on quilts, Norwegians, and diaries. So we're really pleased to have her tonight. And we're very lucky to have her because she happened to be up right after the Boston bombing, so she was up in that area. So we're real glad to have her tonight. Thank you. Come on down.
Yes, I met Suzanne and Debbie at the Texas State Genealogical Conference last November. And I tell you what, she knows how to get free books. She just said, "Can we have one of your books?" And I said, "Well, yes." So, but I'm very proud to have it in the Fort Worth Library. What it is Fort Worth Real Estate, Ben F. Allen and Sons Business Records, City Property, 1914 to 1916, Volume 1. And this picture here is a little dark, but you can see that there are several beaten up, old, dusty, vermin-ridden, things have been in these books. But I saw them, and there were maybe 12 of them altogether, including indexes, in an antique store. And I just had to have them. This was a long time ago, probably 20 years, probably about the time that I did start genealogy. And so I bought them all for $25, and they've been in my closet or in various boxes and over moves and things for all these years. And finally, a couple of years, or last year, I decided I'm going to get these things, start working on these things, getting these things down. It's just like doing your family genealogy. You just got to start. And so that's what I did. I've got an actual one that I brought with me to show you. You can tell in the book in the photograph that they're all different sizes. The long skinny ones are the indexes, and some of them are short, maybe like 6 by 8, and then this is sort of 8 by 13 or something, kind of odd dimensions for today. But when I opened it up, what I found were these pages that had been put in here chronologically. So one day, this Ben F. Allen, do you know Ben F. Allen Company? It was based in the Flatiron Building. And you know the Flatiron Building, right? Okay. It was based there, and they were just a real estate agency, just like today. They handled both commercial and residential property and farm and ranch properties. So they handled the gamut of everything. But every day they would have a listing come in. You can see here's something that's printed, a whole subdivision. But so what I found when I started looking at these books is they're very fragile. They're full of all kinds of information. They're 100 years old now, really, nearly. And So I've just got to start getting these down. So that's what I did. They're available now in this library, and Waco and Irving and the East Texas Heritage Center, which is at Stephen F. Austin, and then, of course, in my own genealogy library. And then I'm about to get it hooked up with Amazon. I've got the ISBN there that you'll be able to order it probably within about a week. And so I'm continuing with this. This volume that you're kind of glancing through is just 2 of those books. And I'll talk about how they're all divided up. But there were a set of city property, and that was the residential and commercial. And then there are a set that are farm and ranch property. So these were discarded by the Ben F. Allen real estate business. Their entire series that survives is basically mostly pre-World War I, some in 1919 and 1918, but all before 1920. Volume 1 is city property from 1914 to 1916. That's what I brought tonight. And these are, what I brought are like the last ones of my draft copies. I don't have any more new ones to sell, and so the new ones are $29.99 if you get one on Amazon. I'm going to sell these tonight for $10 if anybody would like to have one just to glance at. They're just kind of fun to look at, even if you don't have people in them. So this first volume is city property, and then the second volume will also be city property. I thought I would be finished with it by now. I'm not finished with it. And then there will be at least 2 volumes of farm and ranch property. This, and it says here, yeah, this business was in the historic Flatiron Building in downtown Fort Worth. So what good are these old records? I mean, so what, right? You look in there, okay, well, there's McKinney's, but it's not my McKinney, so I'm going to turn it over. Well, basically, if you don't actually find your people in here or your people's property, you might find, somebody's house that you know or are related to in here. But if you don't, what you'll find is a lot of good social information from that time period. They go beyond just the regular real estate listings in the newspaper because they provide a behind-the-scenes view of the real pluses and minuses of the properties. The listings are in pencil for the most part. There are a few things paper clipped in, but mostly they didn't really use paper clips yet too much there. And so sometimes if they wanted to put something in and they wanted to clip it in, they would pin it in with a straight pen. Have you seen that in old records? Yeah. So these are really just of the time, it's like a time capsule got them as far as what they were. Now the condition is deteriorated, but they haven't been changed or fiddled with since who knows when. They were filed in reverse chronological order, so basically that means they would write today's listing down and put it in the prongs of the book, and then close the book, and then tomorrow they would have several listings and put that on. And so when you look at the book, the actual book, I'll give you all a chance to look at that, you'll see that that the oldest ones are in the back. I reversed the order for my printed book just because I think that's the way we look at stuff. And okay, well then the next day this happened, and then the next day. So in my book, they're all in numerical order and chronological order. So they all have listing numbers. In addition to real estate, the firm also acted as agents for stock, cattle, horses, mules. If you wanted to sell your house or you wanted to sell your farm, you could do that. Or you could also sell your pigs or whatever through this company. That I've got such and such a herd of cattle that I want to sell, and can you handle this and find me a buyer? And they would accept the challenge and go do that. They also would accept. They'd say something like, I have a good corner property for sale, and it's got, the sidewalks are paid for, and it's got a fruit tree orchard, and it's got a chicken house, and I'll accept a Ford car for that. And so you could trade your car in on a whole house, a property, a residence. The city goodness knows what a city residence in Fort Worth and some of these neighborhoods would go for today. So you'll find old addresses. These are great for historians to look at, in addition to just strictly genealogists. But you also might find telephone numbers. They had to have a way to call somebody, and most of them had telephone numbers that either they could be contact that was at their house, or it would be at the house next door, or it would be the office in the boarding house where they lived and while they were trying to sell their property or trying to buy property. They would have streetcar information, including how much the car fare was. It might be a nickel from here to stop 6 or whatever, and they would tell you exactly which stop it was, Polytechnic, all these different stops, and of course a lot of these neighborhoods are still there and still known by these names today. They'd tell what neighborhood it was, and a lot of the neighborhoods and subdivisions were very new at that time, and almost in our mind might be rural with the amount of open land within and around all the different houses. The listings would also tell how close it was to a church or a school or a courthouse or the railroad. The railroad is some of the others, if you're looking at a real estate listing today, you might want to know how close it is to various churches or schools or shopping and that kind of thing. That seems pretty normal to us, but a lot of these would say how close they are to the railroad. And of course that was because some of these were business houses and they needed to actually have a railroad for their deliveries and for their to send their merchandise off and to use every day. And so if the property was close to a railroad, they'd let you know because that was important, and that might make or break a deal. Then it would also tell whether it had utilities, and the utilities were usually either gas or electric lights, and they would say, this house has been electrified, or they've got instantaneous gas heaters in this house, and that was a big deal at that time. It was just at the changeover, I think, really, from not having those utilities and not having those benefits to being able to tout that as a plus in selling your home. They would also tell you whether the water was from the well or the city water. And the city water, it would say, well, the city water bill has been running $1.25 a month here. So things have changed on that score, right? And then also you would actually, if you didn't have a well on your property, some of them would say, well, you can get water from the next door neighbor, and they'll charge you 75 cents a month or whatever, $5 a year, things like that. They would tell the condition. That's normal. We want to know what condition that property is going to be in today. They would tell the number of rooms in the arrangement and plants, and whether there were shade trees or room for a garden. So everybody knew, and everybody had gardens. It seems back then. I mean, there's always exceptions, but having a garden and needing to know how much space was available was very much in the seller's mind back then. Oh, you've got, this has great fruit trees, and they're bearing, they bear great, and that kind of thing. They would also tell whether they had servants' quarters or not. And we don't see that a lot in middle class sort of real estate listings today as to whether there's a whole nother house back just for the servants. But that's the way it was back then. In fact, a lot of times middle class our students and gosh, these servants' quarters are as nice as some of the other houses that we have available today. Even the barns have been turned into regular homes for people. So. Some of those still exist. And then they'd also talk about the financial arrangements. And that might be sort of interesting if you're looking at, the economic status of your ancestor, or, you want to know about how did they pay for stuff. And normally they would, a lot of these properties were encumbered. They would have either a loan or taxes or that kind of thing. And they would say, well, I'll take $1,000 down, and they would actually make the arrangements themselves between the two parties, and the agent would just bring the parties together, and the two parties would decide, well, 1.9% interest is too high, 1.75, but I'll put $2,500 down, that kind of thing. They would work that out themselves. City additions, subdivisions, areas, and interurban stops. And building names, like you'll look in the back in the index, and the Flatiron Building will be back there. All the buildings that are named in these listings are in the index. So I worked really hard getting all the names in the index, whether it was buyer or seller, even if it was the person next door, just so that the maximum number of Fort Worth and Tarrant County people would have a chance of finding some mention that might not be somewhere else. Between the 1910 and the 1920 census, you might not have them, and you just might find them here. It's such a small section. It's just one company and one. It's not like the census or the tax records that covered everybody, but your person might be there. It's worth a look. Check the library's copy. I have even women. A lot of times the women were just Mrs. Jones is selling this. She's going to her husband died and she's going to go back and live with her people, and so I would index it as Mrs. Jones, and that might not seem useful in a lot of ways, but if you know maybe where your person might have lived and something about it, it just might help. It doesn't hurt to put it in. It just takes a little more time when you're preparing the book. I've corrected a lot of the spelling. They were doing their business every day in Russian and trying to get all of that taken care of, and so I tried to make editorial decisions where it would be something that we could actually read. And then finally, as another note, the listings definitely have the cultural attitudes about ethnicity that were really common then, most notably about separating whites and Negroes, and they would say whether the property was deemed suitable or not suitable for Negroes, for African Americans, and so that is in there some. It's not in there a whole lot, but it does exist. And so that's kind of just an outline of the books, and that kind of covers the section, what good are they to, I guess. Just, there's a lot of plus and minuses that are in these listings that you just don't find in the newspaper. There are some listings that say things like, she needs to sell this right away. Get all, or another one might say, get all you can on this property. Or another one might say, get this property out there today. Hustle on this one. Go try to sell this. And that was directions to the real estate agents. Well, you're not going to find that in the newspaper, even if you're able to get an old newspaper from those days. These are kind of little tidbits that I thought, that caught my eye. Let's see. And the other thing is they're not just Fort Worth. They're not just Fort Worth. Sorry about this, guys. They're not just Fort Worth. They're also all over Tarrant County. They're also Dallas County, Arlington. Beyond that, there's all over Texas, Galveston, San Angelo, in Oklahoma and Virginia and New Jersey and Ohio and Pennsylvania. So they're throughout these books, there's a lot of listings from other places, and what would happen is the real estate agents would correspond with each other, and they'd say, I've got this property here, it might not sell, but I'll go ahead and put it in my book, it doesn't hurt anything. Or a lot of them were typed and mailed, and you can see that the old carbon paper that they used back then to make sure that everybody had a copy. And then the other thing about these books is that some of these structures still exist, and I'm exploring that. I haven't done nearly enough of that as much as I want to. I've only had one morning to be able to do that. But I did find one building that exists still, and I'm just astonished. And I'm also astonished not just that it exists, but also that it matches the description in the old 1914 listing from this real estate company. Now, these are the actual books that I have. So this volume 1, and these are just the city property. Volume 1 book 1 is completely missing. There's like starts with number 2, and so book 2 starts with listing number 309, and so there's that, and like I said, then there's another whole set that's rural property, and we talked about all that. And okay, and this is just an example of some of the things that I found in the listings other than just this man's scrawled pencil handwriting. Here's one. You can see the straight pen marks up at the top. That's where he had pinned that into his paper. It's a 6-room bungalow on South Henderson, price $3,000, worth more. We'll take auto or good lot up to $1,500, small amount of cash, and give any terms on balance. So they were pretty flexible about making a loan to whoever was going to buy their property, and of course they could do that because they knew that it would revert to them and that there wouldn't be, a whole lot of problems about that. So that business environment is completely different. So that's one of the kinds of things that I found in these listings. And then this is something else that just blows me away. This is like a little hand-drawn map, and this is, and these are just like bonuses. These are just wonderful little things that if you find them, they're cool. And so it shows that exactly how those lots were divided up. I can't read everything. Jennings Street, yeah. So.
I just drove that the other day.
Did you? Is it still there, all divided up like that? So Clay Street, Clay, and Rose. So there's like one, but some of these will show. I'm sorry, where? Oh, somebody was. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Some of these will show like along the back. They'll have like a little row of fruit trees, and this is where the fruit trees are, and here's where the house is, or here's where the paved sidewalk is that's already paid for. And sometimes you had to, if you were buying the house, you had to know that you were also buying the contract to finish paying for the sidewalk to be put in. And then here's an example of some typewritten listings, and they don't have the same high standards that we have today with our Word and our corrections and our spell checker and stuff. But he's got the information in there. He's got important information. Fairmont Avenue. I think y'all have a tour coming up in that area. Price $5,000. It's encumbered for $3,500. So, so the buyer will, yeah. It's got there's two of them there. One in San Antonio. We'll trade these two. Oh no, I'm sorry. We'll trade these two places for one for San Antonio property. So you can imagine that there's some real estate agent down in San Antonio writing this down or typing it up and straight pinning it into his book somewhere to make sure that sale gets made. Washington Avenue, 1500. This is an actual photograph that I found in one of the books. I mean, I was just astounded. Like, how would you love to find a photograph?
Edward Street becomes Cannon.
Cannon?
Yeah.
C-A-N-N-O-N?
Yeah.
Okay.
My grandparents lived on Edward, lived on 1600 block of Cannon, and it had been Edward.
Oh, so they probably lived 5 blocks down.
5 blocks.
Would they have been of an age to know these people maybe, or walk by this house? It looks like a brand new house. The two men, you see the two men, they're not identified in the photo. I have no idea if they're the owners or agents or who they are. But you can see the sidewalk. They're real proud of the sidewalk. And yeah. I'm sorry, I can't, if you want to say something, Ray, because I can't hear. Okay. I'm not stuck up about it or anything. I just want to make sure that I hear you. And then this is the existing house, and it's on my blog. I can't remember right now where it is, but it talked about how many stories it was and what kind of porch it had, and how in back that there was a stable for 3 horses, and it had a garage for 2 Ford cars and things like that. And I drove by there, and it belongs to a man who does oil investing, I think. And the reason that I think that I know this is because when I just went there surreptitiously just to take pictures of somebody else's house, somebody else's property, he was there. So that's always fun when you go up to somebody's house and they're there. But I think they just use it for an office and for investment activities and things. But he told me, he told me when they put in electricity and took out some of the walls and changed some of the configuration of what it. I showed him the listing and everything what I had. And it's south of downtown. I can't remember the name. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's across. I tell you what, it's across the street from a bed and breakfast, fancy bed and breakfast.
Probably Fairmount.
Might be
South of downtown, but also south of what? Rosedale?
south and west of downtown.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is one with the big cupola and.
They've been tearing down stuff
Oh, did it make your head spin?
But Fairmount has a real nice little laser group, and there's a lot of people trying to read that.
Okay, so that may be what I've seen signs for the tour, so maybe that's what that's about. And
And some of the older big churches bought up a lot of land, and they have spread and they've destroyed a lot.
oh, oh, sorry. That hurts me almost as much as like when a person dies. I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, just the way of life and things. So the handout, kind of lists some of these other things that are in the that I have found, and then I just put in a little, and I think I'm running out of time. Is that? Are we getting close? A few more? Okay. So at the very bottom on the last page of the handout, transcribing old records. And the first thing that you need to do is what I didn't do, which is to protect the records. I just put them in a cardboard box and stuffed them all in together, and I didn't know anything about protecting them. So I did the best I could. I did the best I could at the time, but I've since learned that there are products you can buy and ways to protect things. Make sure that they're out of the sun for sure, and that kind of thing. But they can get expensive too. So just do the best you can. Just save whatever you can, and the next person that comes along will have it. When you're working with them and when you're actually doing them, keep the area clean. And the reason I say this, y'all might not have this, but I have little kids. And I have dogs in my house, and it's always a challenge to make sure that when I'm working and that I have a still place and a clean place and something that's not going to harm something that's already almost 100 years old and in bad condition already. And so just make sure that it's as dust-free as possible, and that there's no wind or window open or fan. I mean, whatever's appropriate to the records that you have. It's going to be based on whatever you have. The other thing is, if you have the ability or the equipment to scan and work from the digital version if possible. So I tried to do that. It took a long time to scan, and it was really slow going because this little hinge thing here that holds the posts in that all these pages are on, it was just a real big problem. So the books that I published, I took them out of the hinges for now, and then put them all back in, and I scanned them on a flatbed scanner. I didn't run them through, a sheet-fed scanner. My theory was these are really old records already, and they're not going to, nobody's missed them in all this time, and they're not going to get any worse if I just scan them once. And then so now I have them digitally, and I can copy them, and I can look at them if I want to ever, do any other kind of project or study on them. So scan them and work from a digital version, if at all possible. Now consider the type of old record. Is it a diary? Are they letters, postcards, whatever kind of project it is, it's going to be changed by what kind of record you've got. So these business records were pretty straightforward, and it's not my family, so I didn't have to stop at everything and check with somebody and call Aunt Jerry and say, well, did this happen, and that kind of thing. You'd have to do that with a diary, right? You'd want to do that maybe, or you might get emotional if it's old letters and that kind of thing. But this, I was just like, I've just got to get these records down. I've had them for so long. I feel guilty for not doing this project. And so I was just trying to be businesslike about these business records. And so I think that's a good tactic to take on whatever kind of records you got. Yes, Sam?
What do you do with over 1,000 postcards?
Oh.
Or more?
They're all written, and I would put 3 on a flatbed scanner at a time. I mean, are you able to scan and keep a digital copy? Or?
I haven't seen them in ages.
Oh.
But they are divided by subjects, and they're in shoe boxes.
Yeah.
And that way, and I know how many are in there, and if I've got duplicates, then I'll say, like, I've got 6 of Kalamazoo, and one of them I may have a duplicate of, and that sort of thing, but I haven't seen them in years.
Yeah.
Because I haven't been able to get in the attic to look at them.
Oh. Send those kids up.
But there's more than that, there's more than 1,000.
Oh my gosh. Well, you've done the best thing up to this point as far as keeping them in a box and together. The attic's probably not the best place just because of the heat and the cold, but I mean that's where they are, you know, right? So you can't just you know, it's hard to go get them, but if someone could come along to help you, or if you were able to get up there and get them down into room temperature and normal humidity. Basically paper, and I'm not a technical expert by any means on paper, but basically it likes the same things like we like, and it's harmed by the same things that we don't like too much sunshine and too much cold and too much heat, that kind of thing. So they like to be in the house and in normal humidity and temperature that we would have. Now you say you categorize them by place?
Best I remember I did.
Yeah, that sounds like a good
In
start.
fact, there's probably really close
Put
to like
them
6,000
in-
or 7,000.
Oh my goodness.
If I remember right.
Oh my goodness.
But, well, I'm old enough to, I still collect them.
You still, you
But they
still have
don't
people
go.
sending you postcards. I'm gonna send you a postcard. Yeah, by chronologically. I mean, or by the person who sent them to you. It would be good.
Most of them I bought when I was visiting.
Okay, so most of them may not have been used.
Or one time I got lucky in Denton, and I got a shoebox full for $2.50 of
Oh.
stuff from England.
Oh my goodness. And that brings up another point. Maybe you don't want to keep them for genealogy. Maybe you just might want to sell them on eBay. Some of them can be valuable. I have bought and sold some postcards. I'm by no means an expert on that either.
Information on the back.
Yeah, if they've got information on the back.
One of the cutest ones is, it shows a postman at the door, but he's got the bag.
Oh yeah.
And it's about half an inch square, and you open it up and little tiny pictures fall out, like the big ones do now.
Oh yeah.
Well,
Oh.
this one, that comes out of this
Little photographs of the place.
Risque writing on the back.
no, not on that.
Oh,
There's
wish you
some
were
that do.
here.
They just be surprised what people send through the mail.
Ah.
All this
Well, I bought
It was
about
only
your
1
relatives.
cent. Well, it's basically the same sort of approach that you would take to any kind of handwritten article or any kind of paper that you wanted to keep. Just protect it as best you can, organize it in some way that makes sense to you and that will make sense to whoever you're going to pass them on. Because we're not going to take this stuff with us, right? We're going to give it to somebody. And boy, I think I would sell some of those. But that's just me. That's off the topic. And then there are more business records, and some have more genealogical detail. The book that I did is really just full of rich social history for that time period. A little genealogy bonuses thrown in. I said that in the library. Thrown in, strewn about, a little genealogical information thrown in. So you just never know what you get into. And like I said, I got this book, it's really neat, it's really old, it's really interesting, and I did not know, but all the detail that I would get until I actually started working with them. So expect bonuses. You never know what you're going to find. And then stop periodically in the middle of your project to reassess. Maybe do like a quarter of it and stop and say, okay, now am I transcribing these all the same way? And do I have kind of a consistent editorial style? Am I something that I'm correcting their spelling? Maybe that was really the way it should have been back then. Maybe it's a whole nother street that I wasn't thinking about. So you kind of take a look at it as you go along, and that will help the overall product. And then when you're through, edit for consistency and readability. And then decide how to handle mistakes within the old record. Some of the things that I found, I just went ahead and corrected, and I didn't always note where I corrected a spelling or something. It wasn't always relevant to the project. Maybe in a diary. My grandmother used to always talk about the Erie code instead of an area code for a telephone number. She'd say the Erie code, and so she would write that capital E RIE code. So I would keep that just because it's a flavor of the way that my grandmother talked, And So it's up to you as the editor, the transcriber, the compiler of these records to decide how it's going to really look when you put it into Microsoft Word or type it if you type still. And finally, publish it. And I guess I probably should have used the larger word, share. Just share it with somebody. I don't know what you might kind of come up as a publishing project for the postcards or the inscriptions on the back. But share, let people know that you have it for one. Make sure that it's recorded about how you came about to have it. Like people were asking me, well, where did you get that? And how did that come about? And so I always make sure I got them for $25 at an antique store. You got to look. You never know. So make sure that the provenance of it is recorded, and then transcribe it and print it and get it out there and write articles about it if you're so inclined, and come up and speak about it, and people will be interested to find out more than just genealogy, the real social history, the real what was going on in 1914 and 1916 in Fort Worth. So that's all I have. Are there any questions? Okay. Be sure and have a look at the book before you go, and if you want one of these draft copies, they may or may not have been written in. They've got a couple of typos. They'll be $10, and they will be available on Amazon within probably a week or two with that ISBN number for $30. Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
I got an uncle in here,
You've got an uncle in there. Oh my God.
403, page 24. Not for J.F. McCurdy, Florida, Texas.
Florida,
Yes,
I
ma'am.
was born in Vandergart.
J.F. McCarty is your uncle?
Not
Yes, ma'am.
I'll be. How about that? So,
He had one child, and then my aunt divorced him.
oh.
And
Is that why he was selling the property?
they run away from him because they was afraid that he was going to kidnap the boy.
Oh, yeah.
And he lived in Alvarado with my dad.
Oh my
My
goodness.
grandmother raised him.
So you knew him pretty well being near you, right, with your dad?
Yes, ma'am.
So he had all of block 0, all of block 5, lots 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and 6 in block 1. Lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had a lot of property.
Yeah, he did. I was surprised.
A 1 8-room house with a hall and 2 galleries. 1 3-room house, all brick chimneys. Artesian well and tower. Fenced and cross-fenced for feeding cattle. Sheds to hold 3 cars of hay. That's a lot of hay. Trough to feed 600 to 800 head cattle. On Cotton Belt Railroad. See there, the railroad. Just outside city limits of Niles. You know where Niles is? Yeah.
That's the North Side Stockyards.
On Decatur Road, price $12,000. That's a place. 1/4 cash balance, 4 payments at 8%. We'll trade for good Western land at the right price. That's awesome. Thank you.
That is. I was
Thank you.
surprised.
You just keep that book. That one's yours.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it very much.
So he needed to be near the railroad to have that hay shipped in, it sounds like. Okay, that's wonderful. Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else? Yes.
I take it there's no specific dates on any of these things. They're just in the order of their dates.
Some of them have specific dates and some don't. It just depends on how busy he was that day or whether he thought about it. Most of the typed listings that were mailed in from other agencies or just from individuals will have a date on them, but all of them don't. Here's one that says it was advertised 4/2/1915. So I know like the ones before and after were, probably March, and after was probably, middle of April. And, some of them I cannot pin down specifically. And another thing I haven't done is correlate this, and if you're going to do a publishing project, you're going to want to do this, but to correlate it with other materials. I haven't looked back at the old newspapers yet. So look back at the old newspapers and take photographs. That's the next projects.
And old city directories.
And old city directories,
The
yes
library
ma'am.
has a lot.
Yes, ma'am. I'm going to be coming back here, I think. Yeah.
And the library has a really nice book scanner. You can put some of these old books that are fragile in the book scanner, right?
I can put this in there.
And you don't have to turn them upside down and do all that.
Do they charge for that?
Yeah.
Oh.
The scans are free if
Oh.
And just only if you put it out.
If I put it on my little
Yeah,
card.
the printouts cost, if you put it on your flash drive.
If you put it on your flash drive, it would be free. The printouts would be 15 cents a page.
Cool. I've learned a lot. Thank you guys so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to share this with you. And if you have any more questions, let me know.